Imagine living in a time when fear and suspicion turned neighbors against each other and accusations of witchcraft wreaked havoc across a small town in New England. My name is Lauren Shia, and today we will explore the history of the Salem witch trials, which I warn you is a tale of hysteria, injustice, and the power of collective fear. For the last few years, I've had a passion for learning about dark history. I've spent many hours learning about tragic events characterized by suffering, injustice, and violence. Though heavy, learning about events like the Salem witch trials offers several benefits. First, it prevents history from repeating itself. It also allows us to honor the victims as well as raise awareness about potential future injustices. And lastly, it provides moral and ethical lessons. The Salem witch trials are a tragic yet fascinating piece of history that unfolded from initial accusations to tragic conclusions and highlighted the dangers of mass hysteria and injustice. Today, we will cover the initial incidents that began the suspicions, the major trials and executions to follow, as well as the aftermath and long-term effects that this event left. Starting in January of 1692, the Salem witch trials began with a series of strange behaviors exhibited by a group of young girls in Salem Village. Daughter Betty Parris and niece Abigail Williams of newly announced Reverend Samuel Parris would often go missing throughout the day, and when they would return home, they would often exhibit unusual symptoms such as fits, convulsions, and screaming. These symptoms quickly spread to other young girls in the village, and Reverend Parris did not know how to help them. Reverend Parris and the village doctor could not find a physical cause, leading them to declare that the girls were bewitched. This accusation was pivotal in sparking the hysteria that followed. Author Donna Reynolds writes that, quote, Parris's assertion that witches were living among the villagers of Salem was a key factor in the hysteria that followed. End quote. These accusations led to the blaming and the arresting of minorities in Salem Village, including the Parris family slave, Tituba. After examining the initial events that sparked the bewitchment and hysteria around town, we will now focus on the major trials and executions that marked the climax of the Salem witch trials. The legal system became deeply involved with numerous trials based on questionable evidence. Bridget Bishop was the first witch to be executed. Known for her flamboyant way of dressing, frequently visiting taverns, and engaging in multiple relationships and marriages, she was accused of bewitching 5 girls, most likely because of her un-Puritan-like behavior. Her trial lasted only 8 days, and despite pleading guilty in hopes of mercy, she was hanged on June 10th of 1692. According to Leonard Niehoff from the University of Michigan Law School, the Court of Oyer and Termiter was established in June of 1692 to handle witchcraft cases and was run quite unethically. It relied on unreliable spectral evidence and written testimony. Such evidence led to the conviction of 20 individuals, including Bridget Bishop, who was the first to be executed. With the start of the trials and the unfair justice system covered, we can now dig into the aftermath of the Salem witch trials and their long-term effects. The aftermath of the Salem witch trials brought significant changes to the American legal practices. The Court of Oyer and Termiter was dissolved in 1693 and led to reforms such as the right to legal representation, cross-examination of accusers, the creation of the hearsay rule, and the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. These trials have also been extensively studied to be used as a cautionary tale to educate scholars about the importance of due process. The Salem witch trials also reflect the dangers of gender and power dynamics, with 19 of the 20 of being executed people being women. Clara Lopez Marquis compared the Salem witch trials to the #MeToo movement, which began in 2017 to allow women to share their stories and experiences of harassment and abuse. Marquis states that the present discussion is, quote, is about how women are still considered and treated as witches, and so much more if they denounce violence and harassment, end quote. Marquis notes that women today are often still treated like witches when they speak out against violence and harassment, drawing a parallel between the treatment of women in the 1600s and the 2000s. Reflecting on the broader significance of the Salem witch trials, we see the power of fear and ignorance and the need for justice and rationality in society. We've discussed the initial incidents, the major trials and executions, and the lasting effects on American legal and social practices. These points emphasize the importance of learning from history to avoid repeating its mistakes. If you want to learn more about the Salem witch trials, consider visiting historical sites in Salem, listening to podcasts, or reading primary source documents. Think about your closest friends and family or neighbors and imagine them sentencing you to your death based on an accusation. As we leave today, let's carry the lessons of Salem with us, ensuring that we remain vigilant against injustice and committed to fairness and reason. Thank you so much for listening.